Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are located in the country. Hi, everybody. This is Jamal Jones, and I help people take inspired action with more clarity, confidence, and courage, empowering you to be a higher version of yourself, taking more risk, free of guilt, shame, or any regrets. And a big part of my story as a licensed marriage and family therapist and multi passion entrepreneur is I've experienced burnout both as a W 2 employee and in private practice. And on my journey of recovering from burnout, it's been so cool to connect with like minded professionals, people who work in the mental health space, who are really passionate about providing clients the highest possible standard of care, but also want to make sure that they be able to sustain their own careers. And today we have a very special guest, a beloved colleague of mine whom I met through a coaching community that we both were a part of. And since being in that coaching community, she and I collaborate on an ongoing basis. And just want to have an opportunity to talk with her, to learn more about what she's doing, more about her story, and really excited for her to be able to share with those listening how she can add value to your lives in so many ways. With that being said, I want to welcome our beloved colleague, Michelle Cantrell, LMFT and coach. Michelle, welcome aboard. And can you tell us a little bit about who you are and anything about your background and story today?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jamal. This is a really fun opportunity and a fun way to connect with you. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you since we met in our coaching community. And you have always been such a voice of support and encouragement and optimism. And that has just buoyed me during times of struggle. And I really appreciate that. And I love just getting to chat with you like this. So I'm actually a licensed professional counselor. We're different credentials in that regard, but much the same work. And I've spent about 10 years in private practice. And I will be honest, I treated my private practice through most of those 10 years almost like a hobby. And I didn't take my business seriously. And even with that being said, I still reached a level of burnout. But the thing is, Jamal, as you probably know as much as the rest of us, I think those of us who go into this field, we're really accustomed to carrying a heavy, heavy load, so much so that we don't even know when we're burned out. We don't recognize the signs in ourselves. We talk about it as a field. We talk about how our field is ripe for burnout, but it's always in the context of other people. And I think people are slow to recognize their own burnout in our field. And there's a lot of shame and stigma around that because we're just supposed to be helping people and helping people and helping people and really not have limits on that. So it was an interesting journey on my part. I wasn't really thinking I needed to make any changes because I didn't know I was burned out. Now I can look back and see all the signs. I can see the dread on certain days, the dread with certain kinds of people that I was working with that weren't a right fit for me, the dread around some of the stagnation that I was experiencing in my practice. Still didn't recognize any signs of burnout, even when the pandemic hit. And then one day, my husband and I had a conversation, and this was a really pivotal conversation for us. He had been stuck in a job for 20 years, much of which he was very unhappy. And his unhappiness in his career subsidized my meaningful career and my passions because he had the golden handcuffs. He was the breadwinner in our family and provided the financial support and security we needed in the form of his income, but also in benefits, which, as we know in private practice is harder for us to take advantage of. And he wanted to have more options in his career. He also is a professional writer. He's written 5 novels, had 4 published. And he really wanted to have a goal or a go at being a full-time author. But based on the life we were living, that was going to be a little bit challenging. And he basically, in a kind way, asked me to step up financially.
Wow.
And I was I was flustered because I knew that our field, in our field, there's a risk of burnout. And so I thought that the only way I could contribute more financially was to take on more clients. And to take on more clients would put me at greater risk of burnout. It didn't occur to me that there could be any other way to contribute financially. And then I had lunch with a dear friend and colleague you are familiar with, Elizabeth Polinsky. And we were talking about this, and this is where she introduced me to some different mindsets around how to run my business. And that, Jamal, that was about 2 years ago, and almost 2 years ago. And that was a big turning point for me personally and professionally, because it led to some incredible transformations that, as we often know, our personal and our professional lives are inextricably linked. And so as I made some of these transformations with my business, I transformed my relationship with my business. I first had to recognize I'm in relationship with my business, but that relationship wasn't so great. If I described my business as a person, people would be telling me, that's not such a great relationship, Michelle. You should be thinking about ending that relationship because we weren't doing well. And so I developed a support system to take some risks and make some pretty big changes in my business. And I learned a lot about myself along the way. And of course, as a therapist who's been in practice for 10 years, I've prided myself on being introspective and self-aware. But this unlocked a whole new part of me that had been laying dormant and waiting to be recognized. And I really started to embody my role, not just as a therapist, but as a business owner and an entrepreneur. And that was a big shift for me. And I think that's a big mindset shift for therapists in general, because we go into this because we want to be helpers, not because we want to be business owners, most of us, right? And so that was a big transformation for me. And part of what helped me do that transformation was not only the coaching program where you and I met, but also individual coaching that I did with somebody who has been a fantastic mentor and coach for me and been a big investment in my business, but one that's been worth every penny. And I have really enjoyed and benefited from the way we work together. And so that led me to really want to shift also into coaching. And the thing that I've really fallen in love with in my role as a coach is I get to help people tap into their hidden potential without them first needing a diagnosis to seek support from me. And I find the coaching relationship quite liberating because I can work in so many more different and creative ways. And so I still have my private practice and I enjoy the work that I do. I work a lot with individuals who struggle with high functioning anxiety. Often they have a background with developmental and relational trauma, but they learned to cope with that early on by overfunctioning. And they've done a pretty good job, but they've reached this point in their lives where they're struggling in their relationships and often at risk for burnout. And they're what we call in our field very well defended. They don't know about their own pain often. They just know the symptoms that they're feeling and don't understand what's happening for them. And so that's where I come in and support them. And I also work with couples. I really enjoy working with couples, particularly who have been together for a really long time. They've often raised kids together. Maybe they've run a business together, and they're pretty compatible, but because they've had their focus on these other things, they've sort of drifted apart and lost each other. And so when they come to me, they are just wanting to find a new way. They want to find their way back to each other. And I get really excited helping couples like that. So I keep my private practice as one entity, business entity. And I love the work that I do in that area, and it feels very meaningful for me. And then in the coaching arena, there's a little bit more fun there in play. And it's a different feeling, but I still derive the great meaning from being able to help people get out of their own way and reach their potential. I'm big on sort of that untapped hidden potential and going from a place of floundering and flourishing. And I most often help people in that regard, it's usually professional goals that they have. So I have two specialties as a coach. One is I actually really enjoy working with private practice therapists who are ready to make changes to their business. They've lost that passion and excitement, and they want to come alive again in their business. And so I get really passionate. I can get up on my soapbox about that. And then the other frame is working with people who are just looking to level up in their career, their professions. And it's not career counseling, it's not career coaching, but it's more looking at the mindsets that are getting in the way of them achieving their goals and working through that and creating a plan and building the scaffolding around that plan so that they can take the risks to level up in their careers. So I don't know if that's a nutshell. That might have been like a pile of nuts that I just offered. That was a lot that I just unloaded, but that's a little bit about my background.
That was beautiful, Michelle. Very well articulated. Thank you so much. And we're going to do our best to unpack some of your story.
Okay.
And of course, let people know the best way to work with you moving forward. Mm-hmm. You brought up an interesting point because it's very common for mental health care practitioners. There's many people who might have a full-time position working as a W-2 employee for a hospital or community mental health. Mm-hmm. And they might have their private practice as a side hustle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not like in your case, because your husband and his success in his career, you called it the golden handcuffs. So obviously you guys were kind of comfortable financially,
right?
Which impacted your mindset toward your business because you had some comfort and security from your husband.
Yeah.
And not everyone has that,
right.
but you did. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting to see how that comfort and security that you had from your husband's salary and medical insurance, even though you were a licensed professional counselor and you had a heart for helping people, it's almost like you had untapped potential.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's a good observation, Jamal. Absolutely.
And in terms of your support system, it sounds like in your case, you were fortunate to have somebody in your support system who cared about you, not only as a personal friend, but she also cared about you and your professional development. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. She said, "Hey, Michelle, girl, I gotta tell you something. I gotta tell you something here."
Yep.
And you also talked about how oftentimes people are experiencing burnout and don't know what it is. Like I know for myself, when I experience burnout, it does impact my mood. Like people who know me to be like a very positive, encouraging, fun-loving, supportive. When I'm at my best, I'm very nurturing. That's why I'm a therapist, right? Mm-hmm. I've learned the hard way that one sign that I'm experiencing, like being overwhelmed or being highly stressed, my temper. You know, my voice could change. Yeah. My mood can shift. Mm-hmm. Also, my body can talk to me. Can you share with the audience, what were some signs looking back as you think about it that you were experiencing burnout in private practice as a therapist?
Yeah. Well, I come back to the word I used earlier, stagnation. I was in this place of stagnation, and I have always been, let me walk that back. When I started graduate school to become a therapist, that was another moment in time where I had a big unlock. I discovered a part of me that I didn't really know existed. And that's probably extreme in hindsight, because what I want to say is I discovered the learner in me. And I had been a self-learner prior to that, but I went back to grad school and I joke that I was Hermione Granger. I was like the most, I would win the points for the most participation in class, to the point that one time I was having a bad day and I was quiet, and my professor said, "Michelle, you're awfully quiet today. You know, what do you have to say about this?" And I had that big unlock. I just dove into the research. I loved every class. I was immersed in learning and growing and excited to learn about what I didn't know and to expand on what I did know.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look back, that part of me went dormant again. That is a big sign for me in my burnout, is when that learning part gets quiet. That's a sign for me that something's not okay. And so there was that piece. And then there was just the dread. I created a schedule for myself
Mm-hmm.
that in hindsight was not sustainable. I thought this is what therapists do, but in
We all
hindsight,
do.
sustainable. And on Fridays, I had 3 clients in the morning starting at 8:30 a.m. And then I had a 75-minute trauma process group. And then I had 3 clients in the afternoon ending at 6:30 p.m. And to me, I just thought that was a normal day. And but I knew enough that I called it my hell days. Fridays were my hell day.
Wow. Wow.
And so I can look back and say that's bananas that I had that kind of schedule and I maintained that. And the caseload that I had, the people that I were working with, I cared very deeply for, but they were all my most challenging clients in terms of the symptoms that they were coping with and the help that they needed and the interventions. And so it was a really draining day. And so I dreaded most Fridays. I loved the days that were light. I got excited. I think when we talk about burnout as therapists, there are sort of the general signs that we know about burnout, especially if you've read Emily Nagoski's book on burnout. And we can look at compassion fatigue, that anybody who's in burnout, whether you're a therapist or not, might experience a smaller window of tolerance where maybe you're more irritable or angry. I think there are some, many common signs that are general to the population, including us. But I think there are specific signs unique to therapists. And so in addition to just that dread and the compassion fatigue that I started to feel for some of my clients, it's hard to admit, but it's true. I cared deeply for them and I was burned out. There are other signs, like if you get really behind on your case notes and you just, all you want to do instead of staying on top of your work is go check Instagram or Facebook or scroll, YouTube, whatever it is. I think there's a lot of avoidance is another sign of therapist burnout. And here's one that I've come across, and as I've shared this with other people, I first get a reaction like, and then people start thinking about it. And it's signing up for training after training after training. And the reason, and look, I'm an avid learner. I love learning new things. But the reason why I think that can be, it's not necessarily is, but can be a sign of burnout is because when we're burned out, we lose that passion. And we're desperate to find it again. And we think this next training, it'll spark that passion again. So we keep doing it, keep signing up. Maybe you're actually doing the trainings. Maybe you're not. Maybe if it's like the on-demand stuff, you just have a library full of them and you never actually get to them, which is probably another sign of burnout. And so I think those are some key signs for therapists. I think also, and I want to acknowledge that your viewers may not be therapists. They may be consumers of therapy, but I'm going to be honest that sometimes when therapists have that compassion fatigue, they might start feeling negatively towards their clients. And it's not because it's not anything the clients are doing. The clients are just doing their best. It's not anything their clients are doing. But when we get burned out, we might start having what we call, we know in our field, countertransference. We might start having negative feelings towards our clients that it have more to do with us than it has to do with our clients, but we might not recognize it in the moment because we're burned out and we have tunnel vision. So I think those are some of the key signs and certainly some of the things I was experiencing in my burnout as we went along.
Wow, we got to get this message out to as many folks as possible, because your ability to articulate and communicate all these different symptoms, the loss of joy in learning, the avoidance of progress notes and assessments, and so much more that you discussed is really, really insightful. Thank you. Michelle, can you talk to us a little bit about like how long you've been married? And can you invite us into that world of like being a spouse or a partner
Mhm.
and the impact that your decisions were having on the health or quality of your marriage.
Yeah.
And maybe tell us a little bit about, like, why was it so significant for your husband or
Mhm.
your partner to come to you and say, "Hey, honey, I
Yeah.
love you.
Mm.
You know I love you, honey, and
Mm.
you know I have worked hard and continuously for us, but as your partner, as your husband, step up."
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, you're going right for the heart there, Jamal. Vulnerable question, but I'm happy to talk about it because it is close to my heart and I want to share that piece. So, my husband and I, we have been married. I'm now getting to that stage in my life where I have to think about these things like how old I am, how long I've been married. But
Yeah.
we have been married for 28 years.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
thank you. And we've been together, I think we're coming up on 31 years. We met, in I think we started dating in, gosh, I don't know. I can't do the math. It's been a long time. We've been
Yeah.
together a
Yeah.
long time. And we have two children together, two grown children. And it's sort of funny when we first got married, oddly enough, I was the breadwinner, which is pretty funny because I wasn't making that much money. But he was more pursuing meaningful work at that
Mm-hmm.
point.
Mm-hmm.
He actually was a preschool teacher and he loved it.
Mm.
And he did some work with disadvantaged youth who had been removed from their homes by the state and needed to be in care in private care, and really talk about burnout and really hard work, but very meaningful. And he enjoyed that, but he also we met as English majors in school, so
Okay.
the literary side, thus his
Mm-hmm.
novels,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also very technically, in my mind, brilliant. And
Mm-hmm.
he has always been interested in computers and software.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started kind of leaning more into that. And that led him down the path of I think, a very successful, if not, so rewarding, but successful career in software, working his way up through a well-known company. And I think being able to establish himself as somebody very good at what he did. And then he was at another inflection point in his life where he wanted to be able to go back to the other thing he was really passionate about. And one of the things that I've always been really grateful for in our relationship is when I told him I wanted to go to grad school and become a therapist. I'd been a stay-at-home
Mm-hmm.
mom for about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that was going to be a big hit on our family in a lot of ways, because not only was it going to involve the expense of grad school, but it would also affect him as a parent because I was in school and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes he had to take care of our kids at a time that was not really so great with his work schedule. But he stepped up. He did it, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a little frustrated about it, but he did it. And his support enabled me to be able to pursue a career that I was really excited about. And up until I landed on that career choice, I was floundering. I did feel grateful that I had the opportunity to stay home with my kids and be there when they got home from school as they got older. But I needed something more in my life,
Mm-hmm.
something to give me purpose beyond that role. And becoming a therapist was the first time I really landed on that.
Mm.
And it just profoundly shaped who I am to be able to embody my role in this way. And so that's been very meaningful to me, that I had a partner who really supported me all along the way in that process, even though it imposed on him in many ways too. And so when he came to me and had that conversation, it was vulnerable for him to come to me, because here, let's talk about gender roles. It was him asking his wife for help and
Mm-hmm.
financial help and stepping up. And, we don't really see ourselves personally as defined by that, but it's the air we breathe. So let's acknowledge that. And we've done a lot of our own work together, Jamal.
Mm-hmm.
I became a couples therapist because I had a really positive, I've also had negative, but a positive experience in couples
Mm-hmm.
therapy. I
Mm-hmm.
had our marriage was transformed by good couples therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we've learned how to more effectively take risks and share these vulnerable things with each other, and put out these bids and requests for help when we need it. And he brought it up in a really tender and vulnerable way, and I was caught off guard. I was flustered. I wasn't sure what to do with this request because I had such limiting beliefs that I didn't see any way out of it. But it started getting the wheels turning in my head. How can I do this differently? And so the timing of that conversation, and then my lunch with my friend, was just perfect because that ignited the spark, and then the flames went from there.
Wow, what a beautiful story you and your husband have, and thank you for inviting us into that part of your life. And it really kind of highlights several things, but one thing that kind of resonated with me as you were talking, that's in alignment with like your mission of your coaching business, which is to help people reach their fullest potential.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like um, you and your husband are a team,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been nurturing each other,
Mm-hmm.
supporting each other, and as you both have been growing in your personal and professional development, um, at different stages of your marriage and your professional life, you discover these new superpowers.
I love it. Yes.
And
Yes.
it was like he was vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
for his own reasons, that things are happening with him professionally and personally. And he came to you like a superhero,
Mm-hmm.
like, Michelle, honey, it's time for you to, we know you have these superpowers inside of you. We know that you have this potential
Yeah.
that's untapped. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you are a licensed professional counselor.
Mm-hmm.
You've raised two kids.
Yeah.
You're an awesome wife. You're a leader. You love to learn, and
Mm.
honey, we both know that you have so much superpowers that
Yeah.
aren't being used.
Yeah.
Can you tap into them for us?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, that I just think that is so cool the way
Mm.
that played out in your relationship with your husband.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a transformative conversation. And, isn't that ultimately what we do, Jamal? We create transformative conversations.
So, can you tell the listeners, because they might need some clarity,
Mm-hmm.
like, where specifically are you located in the country?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Give us any information about your therapy practice, because you might have some folks listening who might be interested in seeing you as a licensed professional counselor. You might have some folks who want to work with you. They may be a therapist in private practice, and they're they realize they're not hitting their full potential, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe someone in corporate America are working in nonprofits, or just there are women out there, there are men out there who can benefit. So can you clarify where are you located in your
Yeah.
therapy practice, but also tell us about your coaching business, and what's the best way for folks to follow you
Yeah.
and take advantage of your services?
Yeah. I appreciate that. Glad to talk about it, Jamal. So I am licensed, either, depending on where you are, either a licensed professional clinical counselor in California, or a licensed professional counselor in Washington, D.C. and Virginia. And I offer virtual therapy to clients located in any of those regions. And in my my therapy practice, I see adult individuals and couples. I won't be repetitive around some of the work I do there, but I do continue to enjoy working in the areas of couple therapy and working with these couples that have sort of drifted apart and want to find each other again, or individuals who have high functioning anxiety. For my coaching business, of course, the one of the benefits of coaching is I'm not limited by state requirements, and so I really can see anybody throughout the world, really. What I I would like to be able to do is, in addition to having a virtual coaching practice, I'd also like to be able to work more with individuals in the Los Angeles area where I can go on site and be at their locations or find other ways to provide services beyond virtual therapy and or virtual coaching. And one of the things that I love about the way I provide coaching services is I tend to operate in what I call like 1 month containers where we commit, to a month worth of work, and during that month we typically meet 4 times in that month. And in addition to meeting, whether it's face to face or virtually, I provide in between session support using a walkie talkie app called Voxer. And you can use it as a regular messaging app, but you can also use the walkie talkie feature. And this really allows for more of the real time support that we can't do with therapy. And when I think about therapy, it's generally a longer term relationship. And so there are other ways to leverage that support, whereas coaching relationships tend to be a little bit shorter. So I want to offer as much scaffolding around the changes that my clients are making as possible. And so an example, Jamal, if you were my client and you wanted to raise your fees with your clients and you knew you were going to have a hard conversation coming up on Monday at 10 a.m., I would make a little note in my calendar and I would be there offering you encouragement via our messaging app and letting you know that I'm coming alongside you in that experience. And so that's part of the scaffolding that I like to create in the coaching relationship that is a little bit harder to do in that way because of the professional boundaries we need to maintain to uphold our ethical standards in our therapy practice. And so, I'm very clear about the boundaries that I have as a coaching professional, but those boundaries do get to be a little bit different than the boundaries that I maintain in my therapy practice. So yeah, go ahead.
If someone's listening and do you focus on therapists in private practice? Do you focus on any mental health care practitioner?
I want to help people who are helping professionals who are ready to make changes in their relationship with their business. And so that can, cross a broad spectrum, but because of my own background in therapy, I tend to attract therapists who are in private practice and they hear the way I talk about burnout that's a little bit different or more specific, and they start thinking, oh, that sounds a lot like me. And so that's who I typically end up working with.
And if someone's located in Los Angeles, in particular, if someone is listening in Los Angeles and they're a therapist in private practice, and maybe they're trying to leave insurance panels, or maybe they're listening to this today and they are thinking about, are they undercharging? Are they having hell days, like the hell days you had? Because truth be told, that your hell day Fridays that you were having, where you had 3 a.m, a 75-minute group, and then 3 p.m, you had to document it all. The truth be told, many therapists have hell days 5-6 days a week, unfortunately. So for those folks who are having these hell days, like several times a week, and they're in LA, why you? Why should they reach out to you for a consultation?
Yeah, I mean, the words that echo in my head is, I get it. Even though, I want to acknowledge I have come into the place that I'm in from a more privileged position. I did have some financial privilege that not everybody in our field has. And so I try to be cognizant of that when I'm working with people who don't have that buffer that I had. But I think I can bring to the experience my own compassion, my own experience of burnout, because burnout is burnout. And I can also be really pragmatic about it, though. And even as we create or establish the ambitions and aspirations that somebody is working towards, I want to make sure that we are doing it with a realistic framework. And so I think that's where some of the coaching that I've had exposure to can fall short. There's an ideal,
Mm-hmm.
and that ideal doesn't address some of the real world problems that therapists are facing and need to overcome in order to make some changes. So I try and bring to the process a pragmatism along with how do we work towards your ambitions and aspirations. And the other thing is, I really would like to offer something that I think a lot of coaches aren't going to be offering, which is schedules permitting, I want to come to you. I want to see what it's like to be immersed in the world that you're in rather than just have us, let's face it, I love Zoom. I'm glad we have this new world that we exist in where we can expand our offerings through virtual therapy. But I think that's also part of the burnout because I think it just taxes us more to be on Zoom all day long. So if I can avoid it, I don't want to be one more person on your Zoom schedule. I want to be able to come to you. Let's meet face to face. Let's have a relationship that can be more restorative through that direct contact.
What a wonderful opportunity. So, for those listening, if you are a licensed clinical social worker, licensed professional counselor, a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed psychologist, if you are a licensed mental health care practitioner in private practice, particularly in Los Angeles area, and you would like to have the benefit of having your own coach actually come to your office or come to your place of business, or even if it might be in a part of your home, inside your home, wherever you are comfortable, you have someone here in the LA area who's willing to come to you, to meet with you, and to actually talk to you about how to improve your business, whether it's learning to increase your fees, how to set your policies. There's things that you know that you want to do. We're still here in the new year in 2024. I know many people are trying to still implement certain plans and strategies for this year. This is a wonderful opportunity that Michelle is presenting to those in the LA area. So even if it might not be you who want to take advantage of it, please help us spread the word to others. Michelle, what if I'm not in LA area and I can't enjoy that benefit of working with you in person in LA? What if I'm in New York or Texas? But I'm watching this and I'm a therapist in private practice, or I'm a high achieving professional. I'm working in corporate America or the CEO of a nonprofit, and and this person feels like they want to gain more of a competitive edge. They feel like they're not reaching their full potential. How can you help somebody in those cases where you do work with coaching clients virtually?
Yeah, well, I still offer the same kinds of support. It's just now we're on a screen rather than face to face, but we're still addressing things in the same way. We're looking at what I have a mantra that I live by, which is, are my actions in alignment with my ambitions and my aspirations? Every day I'm asking myself these questions. And what I want to do is help support people that I'm working with to be able to be clear on whether or not their actions are aligned with their ambitions and aspirations. But in order to do that, we first need to get clarity on what those ambitions and aspirations are. And going a little bit deeper, even what are the values driving those identified ambitions and aspirations? Because sometimes people might come to me and they think they know what their ambitions are, but when we dig a little deeper, it turns out those ambitions are actually somebody else's ambitions for them and not their own. So my job is to start out with sort of the Socratic questioning, right? Just getting really curious. I want to deeply know the people that I work with so that I can offer them unique responses to help them grow in their area. I am not a cookie cutter, one size fits all therapist or coach. And so in order to be able to be responsive to the needs of my clients, I first have to get to know them. I need to get clear on their goals. It's helpful to understand their values that are informing their goals. And then as we establish that, then we go about the other systems that I put in place to support that process, the between session support, the voxering, the communication, and again, I mean, it might be we're talking about your professional goals that we've set up, but it also might be talking about the things in your personal life that are getting in the way of those professional goals. And so it's a really comprehensive approach that allows me to draw on my background in therapy, even though in my coaching world, I am not providing therapy. It's a really holistic approach to provide.
And what's interesting, Michelle, is because of your mental health background, because to be in the coaching industry, coaching in and of itself does not require the same amount of knowledge, training, formal knowledge in terms of like the level of degree and the CEUs. By nature of you being a licensed professional counselor, you represent the highest level of excellence when it comes to mental health and mental health care. And so what you're doing is you're actually blending some of your mental health background completely separate from your therapy practice.
Yes.
But for those folks looking for a coach, like, because there's somebody out there who might want a life coach.
Yeah.
Well, how powerful would it be to have a coach like you to help this person reach their full potential, who also understands some of the nuances of mental health? Again, you're not doing therapy,
right,
but your ability to integrate some of that into your coaching kind of sets you apart.
Yes. I would also like to add to that, Jamal, that I do feel like it is a tremendous asset to have a background in mental health and to have all the experience that I do. And I am actually also going through a coaching certification program so that I can be sure that I'm offering the best and most ethical coaching practices to my clients. So at the end of that program, when I've met all the criteria, I will be a certified coach by the International Coaching Federation, which is the most widely recognized credentialing body for coaching. And as you pointed out, you don't need to have any experience or expertise to become a coach. You can decide tomorrow you want to become a coach and hang out your shingle outside your door and become a coach. But I really want to make sure that I'm providing the best and most ethically competent services to my clients and making sure there is a very clear, distinct line between the services I offer as a therapist and the services I offer as a coach. Because while there is overlap, there are some important differences. And I don't want clients to be mistaking one for the other.
And I can hear the congruence as you've been sharing your story today. As we come to a close, I can hear this sense of, as you've been growing as a therapist and growing as a coach, it sounds like you've been very intentional about investing in yourself.
Yes.
You've hired your own therapists, you've hired your own coaches.
Yep.
Which also helps.
Do this alone.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, is there anything else? Feel free to tell the audience about your website, our newsletters, best way to follow up.
Yeah, at this point, I have 2 websites, one for each of my businesses, and they're pretty easy to remember. I have michellecantrell.com, which serves my therapy clients or potential therapy clients. And then I have michellecantrellcoaching.com, which is obviously targeted towards my coaching practices. And any information that any potential client needs is on those websites, as well as the ability to book a free consult with me for either of those services. I really want to make sure that when I start working with somebody that I am going to be the best fit for them. And that's an important part of my screening process, is to assess before we ever start working together if not only am I going to be a good fit for my clients, but are they going to be a good fit for me, so that we can have a relatively high level of confidence that we're going to be able to do good work together. And in both roles, it's probably a little bit more obvious in the coaching world, but I say this to my therapy clients all the time. My job is always to work myself out of a job. And so in order for me to be able to do that efficiently and effectively, I need to make sure that the people I'm working with are really the right fit for the way I like to work and the places I do my best work.
Thank you, Michelle, for your time today and for sharing your story and your passion with us. We are so grateful. And I will look forward to seeing you around. And Michelle looks forward to serving those whom she has called to serve in the coming months and years ahead.
Well, Jamal, I so loved this conversation and I appreciate the opportunity to join you in this way.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Be
Bye,
encouraged.
Jamal. See you soon. Bye.
See you soon.